Eleanor Sterling thought she had the perfect marriage. Her husband, Marcus, was the CEO of Titan Global, a man who claimed his only mistress was his work. On a Tuesday morning, he kissed her goodbye, claiming he was flying to Tokyo for the most critical merger of his career. He looked her in the eye and promised to call the second he landed. But he never made it to Tokyo. 6 hours later, while scrolling through social media, Elena stumbled upon a live stream of a lavish wedding in Lake Como. And there, standing at the altar in a Tom Ford tuxedo, wasn't a stranger. It was Marcus. He wasn't on a business trip. He was marrying his mistress. And Eleanor? She was about to become his worst nightmare. The air in the penthouse on 57th Street was always cold, no matter how high Elena turned up the thermostat. It was a sterile kind of cold, smelling of white lilies and expensive leather. Elena Sterling tightened the silk belt of her robe, watching her husband, Marcus, adjust his tie in the hallway mirror. Marcus was 45, but he wore his age like a weapon. Distinguished, sharp, and intimidating. He was the face of Titan Global, a venture capital firm that ate smaller companies for breakfast. Elena had been by his side for 12 years, ever since he was just a hungry broker with a jagged ambition and a cheap suit. She had built him up, smoothed his edges, and connected him with the old money families he needed to survive. "You're going to be late," Elena said softly, stepping forward to fix his collar. Marcus didn't flinch, but he didn't lean into her touch either. He checked his watch, a Patek Philippe Nautilus she had bought him for their 10th anniversary. It was worth more than most people's houses. "The jet is waiting," Marcus said, his voice clipped. "Tokyo is a long flight, Elle. I need to review the merger files on the way." "Tokyo," she repeated, a strange knot forming in her stomach. She couldn't explain it, but the air felt heavy today. "Are you sure you have to go personally? Can't Julian handle the Japanese investors?" Marcus finally looked at her. His eyes were a piercing blue, usually cold, but today they held something else. Impatience? Guilt? It was gone too quickly to read. "Julian is a lawyer, Elena. He's not a closer. If I don't close this deal, the stock plummets. I'm doing this for us, for the future." He leaned in, placing a quick, dry kiss on her forehead. "I'll be back on Monday. Don't wait up for my call tonight. The time difference is a killer." "I love you, Marcus," she whispered. He grabbed his briefcase. "I know. Take care of the house, Elle." He didn't say it back. Elena stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the black SUV swallow him up on the street below. She watched until the car disappeared into the Manhattan traffic. She shouldn't have felt uneasy. This was routine. Marcus traveled 3 weeks out of the month. She was the trophy wife who ran the charity galas and kept the social calendar immaculate. It was the deal they had made. He made the billions. She made him look human. The morning passed in a blur of lonely luxury. Elena had a Pilates session at 10 a.m., a meeting with the caterers for the upcoming Met Gala at noon, and then silence. By 4 p.m., the silence was deafening. She poured herself a glass of Chardonnay and sat on the sprawling velvet sofa. Usually, she would read, but today her phone felt like a magnet. She picked it up, scrolling aimlessly through Instagram. The algorithm knew her well. It showed her interior design trends, high-fashion runway clips, and travel destinations. She scrolled past a video of a golden retriever and a clip of a new restaurant opening in Soho. Then her thumb froze. It was a suggested post from a high-end event planner based in Italy, La Dolce Vita Events. Elena followed them for inspiration for her charity balls. The post was a notification. La Dolce Vita Events is live now. The Sterling Vance wedding at Villa d'Este. Elena frowned. Sterling? It was a common enough name. But the combination with Vance sparked a memory she couldn't quite place. Curiosity got the better of her. She tapped the notification, the screen filled with the breathtaking scenery of Lake Como. The water was a deep, sparkling blue, contrasting with the lush green gardens of the Villa d'Este. White roses, thousands of them, adorned a massive archway overlooking the lake. The camera panned over a crowd of incredibly well-dressed people. "Who gets married on a Tuesday?" Elena muttered, taking a sip of wine. The camera operator was moving through the crowd, whispering in Italian about the beauty of the bride. The live stream was shaky, clearly meant for behind-the-scenes engagement. "And here comes the groom," the voiceover said. The camera swung toward the altar. Elena dropped her wine glass. It shattered on the marble floor, red liquid splashing onto the white rug like a crime scene. But Elena didn't hear the crash. She couldn't hear anything over the roaring of blood in her ears. Standing at the altar, laughing with a best man she didn't recognize, was Marcus. He wasn't in Tokyo. He wasn't in a boardroom. He was in Italy. He was wearing the Tom Ford tuxedo she had picked out for him last month for a charity gala. He was wearing the Patek Philippe watch, and he was looking down the aisle with a look of adoration she hadn't seen directed at her in 5 years. "No," she gasped, her hand shaking so violently she almost dropped the phone. "This isn't real. This is a prank, a deepfake." But the camera zoomed in. There was a small scar above his left eyebrow from a skiing accident in Aspen 3 years ago. It was him. Then the music swelled. The bridal march began. Elena felt like she was drowning. She watched, paralyzed, as the bride stepped into view. She was young, maybe 24, blonde, statuesque, wearing a dress that probably cost more than Eleanor's father made in a lifetime. Eleanor recognized her instantly. It was Isabella Vance, the daughter of the Senator Marcus had been lobbying last year. The intern Marcus had hired for the summer program because he owed her father a favor. Isabella walked down the aisle, beaming. Marcus stepped forward, tears, actual tears in his eyes. He took Isabella's hands. The audio on the phone crackled, but Eleanor heard it clearly. "You look beautiful," Marcus mouthed. Elena screamed. It was a guttural, raw sound that echoed through the empty penthouse. She threw the phone across the room. It bounced off the sofa cushion, the tiny screen still broadcasting the destruction of her entire life. She fell to her knees amidst the shattered glass and spilled wine, gasping for air. He wasn't just cheating. He was marrying her. How? How was this legally possible? They were still married. They hadn't even discussed separation, or so she thought. Elena lay on the floor for 20 minutes. The shock was a physical weight, pressing her down. But Elena Sterling was not a woman who stayed down. She came from a line of women who survived tough winters and tougher men. She stood up. She didn't clean the wine. She walked straight to Marcus's home office. The door was locked. It was always locked. Client confidentiality, he always said. Elena went to the master bedroom, opened the safe hidden behind the painting, and took out the emergency key she wasn't supposed to know about. She marched back to the office and unlocked the heavy oak door. The room smelled of him. Sandalwood and deception. She sat at his desk and opened his laptop. Password protected, of course. She tried his birthday. Incorrect. She tried the date of the company founding. Incorrect. She paused, thinking of the woman on the screen. Isabella Vance. She typed Isabella. Access granted. The desktop flickered to life. Elena felt bile rise in her throat, but she swallowed it down. She didn't have time to be sick. She needed answers. She navigated to his personal email. It was all there. The flight confirmations to Milan, not Tokyo. The invoices for the Villa d'Este, the jewelry receipts from Cartier, a diamond necklace for Isabella worth 250,000 dotlos. Purchased on the same day, Marcus told Elena they needed to cut back on household expenses because the market was volatile. But that wasn't the smoking gun. She needed to know how he was marrying her without committing bigamy. She searched the files for divorce. A PDF popped up. Sterling versus Sterling. Final decree. Eleanor clicked it, her heart hammering against her ribs. The document opened. It was a divorce decree, dated 6 months ago. It was signed by a judge in a county in Nevada she had never visited. And at the bottom, there was her signature. Elena touched the screen. It was a perfect replica of her handwriting, but she had never seen this document in her life. "You bastard!" she hissed. He had forged her signature. He had divorced her in secret, likely paying off a judge in a remote jurisdiction to push it through without her being served. In the eyes of the law, she had been divorced for half a year. She was living in his house as a guest. She had no rights to his assets, no claim to his fortune, and no idea she was single. He had planned this perfectly. He wanted to marry the senator's daughter to secure political leverage for his firm, but he didn't want the messy publicity of a high-profile divorce war. So, he simply erased her. She was going to be kicked out. Probably when he returned from his honeymoon. He would likely have security waiting to escort her out of the penthouse she had designed. Elena leaned back in the chair, a cold calm washing over her. The tears had stopped. She looked at the time. It was 10 p.m. in Italy. The reception would be starting. He was probably making a toast right now, charming the senator, laughing with his new bride. She grabbed her phone from the living room. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. She dialed a number she hadn't used in years. "Hello?" A groggy voice answered. "Julian," Elena said. Julian Thorne was Marcus's former partner, the man Marcus had pushed out of the company 5 years ago, stealing his intellectual property and leaving him with pennies. Julian was a brilliant forensic accountant who was currently drinking himself to death in a small apartment in Queens. "Elena?" Julian sounded confused. It's been years. Is everything okay?" "No, Julian. Everything is over. Marcus is in Italy, marrying Isabella Vance." Silence on the other end. Then a dark, dry chuckle. "The senator's daughter? Of course he is. That ambitious snake. Why are you calling me, Elena? Want me to send a gift?" "He forged my signature on divorce papers, Julian. I've been divorced for 6 months and didn't know it." The laughter stopped abruptly. "That's fraud. Serious fraud. But proving it against Marcus. He owns the judges, Elena. He'll say you signed it and forgot. He'll say you're crazy. He has the money to bury you." "I know," Elena said, her voice turning to steel. "I don't want to sue him, Julian. Not yet." "Then what do you want?" Elena looked at the computer screen, at the bank transfer records she had just found. Marcus was moving millions of dollars into offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands to hide assets from the divorce settlement she never got. "I want to ruin him," Elena said. "I have his laptop. I have his passwords. I have access to the offshore accounts he thinks are hidden. He's in Italy for the next 10 hours, distracted, drunk on champagne and victory. He's not watching the system." "Elena," Julian's voice shifted from groggy to sharp. "If we do this, there's no going back. This is federal prison if we miss. This is war. He stole 12 years of my life, Julian. He stole my dignity. He thinks I'm a stupid trophy wife who will cry and fade away." Elena stood up, looking out at the city lights. "I want you to come over. Bring your hard drives. We're going to drain him dry before he even cuts the cake." "I'm on my way," Julian said. "Don't touch anything else until I get there." Elena hung up. She walked to the wet bar and poured another glass of wine. She walked back to the window. "Enjoy your wedding night, Marcus," she whispered to the reflection in the glass, "because by tomorrow morning you won't be able to afford the flight home." But Elena didn't know the half of it yet. As she waited for Julian, a new email pinged on Marcus's laptop. It wasn't from a bank, it was from a private investigator. Subject: the problem with Eleanor. She opened it. The body of the email read, "The setup is complete. The drugs have been planted in her car. As soon as you give the signal from Italy, we'll make the anonymous tip. She'll be arrested for trafficking before you land. Custody of the house will transfer to you immediately, due to the morality clause in the prenup." Elena's hand flew to her mouth. He wasn't just going to leave her. He was going to frame her. He was going to send her to prison to ensure she could never contest the fake divorce. This wasn't just a breakup. This was a hit. The intercom buzzed. "Mrs. Sterling?" The doorman's voice came through. "There are 2 police officers here to see you. They say they have a warrant to search your vehicle." They were early. Elena looked around the room. She was trapped. If she went down there, it was over. She grabbed the laptop, the hard drive, and her passport. She ran to the service elevator in the back of the kitchen, the one the maids used. The game had changed. She couldn't just bankrupt him from the desk. She had to run, and there was only one place she could go where he wouldn't expect her. She was going to Italy. She was going to crash that wedding. The service elevator smelled of stale coffee and ammonia. It rattled as it descended, a stark contrast to the silent, plush lift Elena usually took to the penthouse. She clutched Marcus's platinum MacBook to her chest, her knuckles white. The numbers above the door ticked down agonizingly slow. 20. 19. 18. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was the doorman again. She didn't answer. When the doors opened at the basement level, Elena didn't step out immediately. She peered around the metal frame. The loading dock was empty, save for a few delivery trucks. She pulled the hood of her cashmere sweater up, a ridiculous disguise for a woman whose face had been in Vogue spreads. But it was all she had. She sprinted toward the rear exit, her heels clicking loudly on the concrete. She kicked them off, running barefoot on the cold, dirty floor. She pushed through the heavy fire door and burst into the alleyway behind 57th Street. The New York air hit her like a slap, cold, wet, and smelling of exhaust. A dark grey sedan was idling at the corner. The window rolled down. Julian Thorne looked older than she remembered. His face was unshaven, and his eyes carried the heavy bags of an insomniac, but his gaze was sharp. "Get in," he barked. Elena dove into the passenger seat just as a police cruiser turned the corner, lights flashing, heading toward the front of her building. Julian didn't wait. He merged aggressively into traffic, heading towards the Queensboro Bridge. "You look like hell, Elena," Julian said, lighting a cigarette with one hand. The car smelled of old tobacco and fast food wrappers. A world away from the lavender-scented life she had lived an hour ago. "They were there to arrest me, Julian," she said, her voice trembling. "Marcus planted drugs in my car. He sent the police to my home while he's getting married in Italy. He wanted me locked away so I couldn't contest the fake divorce." Julian gripped the steering wheel tighter. "That sounds like Marcus. Efficient, ruthless. He doesn't just burn bridges. He nukes the land so nothing can grow back. Where are we going?" "My place, Astoria. It's not the Ritz, but it's off the grid. If you have your phone on you, throw it out the window. Now." Elena hesitated. Her photos, her contacts, her memories. "Do it, Elena!" Julian shouted. "If they have a warrant, they're pinging the GPS. Do you want to go to Rikers Island, or do you want to take this son of a bitch down?" Elena rolled down the window. She looked at the device one last time. The screensaver was a photo of her and Marcus in Bali. A lie. She threw it. The phone clattered onto the Queensboro Bridge and vanished under the tires of a trailing taxi. They drove in silence until they reached a nondescript brick building in Astoria. Julian's apartment was a chaotic mess of servers, monitors, and empty energy drink cans. The hum of cooling fans was the only sound. "Okay," Julian said, clearing a space on a desk cluttered with wires. "Give me the laptop." Elena handed it over. Julian cracked his knuckles and plugged it in. He bypassed the encryption with a speed that frightened her. "He's gotten sloppy," Julian muttered, his eyes scanning lines of code. "Arrogance does that to a man. He thinks he's untouchable." Julian paused, his face pale in the glow of the monitor. "What is it?" Elena asked, leaning over his shoulder. "I thought he was just hiding money from you," Julian said softly. "But this... Elena, look at these transfers." He pointed to a series of transactions labeled consulting fees going to a shell company in Panama. $5 million last week, $10 million the month before, all from the accounts of Titan Global investors. So he's embezzling? Worse, Julian said, looking up at her. He's laundering. These funds originate from accounts linked to the Voronin syndicate, Russian organized crime. He's washing their money through the senator's re-election campaign super PAC. Elena gasped. Senator Vance? Isabella's father. Exactly. That's why he's marrying the daughter. It's not just for social standing. It's insurance. He's marrying into political protection. If he marries Isabella, the senator can't turn on him without destroying his own daughter. And if the senator becomes vice president next year, Marcus becomes untouchable. The gravity of the situation settled on Eleanor's shoulders. This wasn't just a domestic dispute anymore. She was holding evidence of international money laundering and political corruption. "If I expose this," Elena started. "He goes to jail for life. The senator goes down with him," Julian finished. "But you have to be careful. These aren't just greedy bankers, Elena. These are people who make problems disappear permanently." Elena looked at the screen. She saw the live feed of the wedding still playing in a small window Julian had opened. Marcus was laughing, holding a glass of champagne. He looked so happy. So free. "He thinks I'm in handcuffs right now," Elena whispered. "He thinks he's won." She turned to Julian. "Can you access the offshore accounts? The ones in the Caymans?" "I can," Julian said, a wicked grin spreading across his face. "I helped him build the back door 5 years ago. He never changed it because he thought I was too drunk to remember." "Drain them," Elena commanded. "Leave him nothing. But don't just transfer it. I want you to send it somewhere he can't touch it." "Where?" "Donate it," Elena said coldly. "Donate every single cent to the charities he pretends to care about. The orphanages, the women's shelters. Empty the accounts." Julian's fingers flew across the keyboard. "This is going to trigger alerts. His phone will blow up." "Not if we time it right," Elena said. She pointed to the live stream. "Look at the itinerary. The vows are in 20 minutes. He'll be at the altar. His phone will be with his best man, or in the dressing room. He won't check it until the ceremony is over." 20 minutes, Julian said. "Let's wreck a billionaire." The transfer bar on the screen moved painfully slow. 45%. 56%. Elena paced the small apartment. She had changed into a pair of jeans and a hoodie Julian gave her. She looked like a college student, not the queen of Manhattan society. "Done," Julian said, hitting the enter key with a flourish. $140 million, distributed to 65 different charities across the globe. By the time he realizes it, the money will be feeding children in Sudan and building libraries in the Bronx. It's irretrievable. Elena felt a surge of satisfaction, but it wasn't enough. Losing money hurts, but for a man like Marcus, humiliation was the only fatal wound. "I need to get to Italy," Elena said. "You can't fly commercial," Julian warned. "Your name is probably flagged by now if the police put out an APB for the drugs in your car." "I have a plan," Elena said. She reached into her bra and pulled out a small velvet pouch. She dumped the contents onto the desk. 3 large, uncut diamonds rolled across the wood. Julian whistled. "Are those real?" "They were investments. Marcus told me to keep in the safe in case of a market crash. Unregistered stones, no paper trail." She picked one up. "I know a pilot in New Jersey. He flies cargo runs to Europe off the books. He owes me a favor from when I got his daughter into Juilliard." "Elena," Julian said, standing up, "you're going into the lion's den. If you show up there—" "I'm not just going to show up, Julian. I'm going to end it." She grabbed the laptop. "I need this. The evidence of the laundering." "Take it," Julian said. "I made a copy on a cloud server just in case. If you don't call me in 24 hours, I send everything to the FBI." Elena hugged him, a fierce, desperate embrace. "Thank you, Julian." "Give him hell, El." 3 hours later, Elena was sitting in the jump seat of a dusty Gulfstream 4, surrounded by crates of auto parts. The pilot, a gruff man named Sal, didn't ask questions after she handed him a diamond worth $50,000. They landed at a small private airfield outside of Milan, just as the sun was beginning to set over Italy. The sky was a bruised purple, matching the exhaustion under Elena's eyes. She had no luggage, no phone, just a laptop bag and a burning rage that kept her warm. She used the remaining cash she had to bribe a taxi driver to take her to Lake Como. The drive took an hour. As they wound through the narrow roads, catching glimpses of the lake, Elena planned her entrance. The Villa d'Este was a fortress. Security would be tight. The senator was there, which meant Secret Service, or at least high-level private protection. She couldn't just walk in the front door. The taxi dropped her off a mile from the villa. She walked the rest of the way in the dark, skirting the edge of the road. When she reached the perimeter, she could hear the music. A live orchestra playing Vivaldi. She could smell the roasting lamb and the expensive perfume wafting over the high stone walls. She found a service entrance near the kitchens. 2 waiters were smoking outside, complaining in Italian about the bride's demands. Elena waited in the shadows until a delivery van arrived with more flowers. As the gate buzzed open, she slipped behind the van, crouching low. She darted into the laundry room, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She was inside. She moved through the corridors, blending into the chaos of the catering staff. She grabbed a discarded black apron and tied it over her hoodie, grabbing a tray of empty champagne flutes to look busy. She made her way toward the terrace. The scene was even more opulent than it had looked on the phone. Crystal chandeliers hung from the trees. The guests were seated at long tables adorned with gold cutlery. And there, at the head table, sat Marcus and Isabella. Isabella was laughing, her hand resting possessively on Marcus's arm. Marcus looked relaxed, swirling his wine. He had no idea he was broke. He had no idea the FBI was probably receiving Julian's file right now. Eleanor ditched the tray behind a statue. She took off the apron. She smoothed her hair. She wasn't going to hide anymore. She stepped out of the shadows and onto the illuminated dance floor, just as the band struck up the chords for the first dance. The singer crooned, "At last." Marcus stood up, offering his hand to Isabella. The crowd applauded politely. Elena walked straight toward them. The first person to notice her was the senator. He was sitting next to the bride, and his face went from jovial to ashen white in a second. He nudged his security guard, but it was too late. Elena stopped 10 feet away from the happy couple. The music didn't stop immediately, but the hush that fell over the nearby tables rippled outward like a wave. People turned. Whispers started. Marcus, sensing the shift in the room, turned around. His smile froze. It didn't fade. It just solidified into a mask of pure horror. He looked like he was seeing a ghost. "Marcus," Elena said. Her voice wasn't loud, but in the sudden silence, it carried perfectly. "Elena," he choked out. You're supposed to be." "In jail?" Elena finished for him, arching an eyebrow. "Sorry to disappoint you, darling, but the traffic in New York was murder." Isabella looked between them, confused. "Marcus? Who is this? Why is she dressed like a homeless person?" Eleanor laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. "I'm his wife, Isabella. Or I was, until he forged my signature on a divorce decree so he could marry you and wash your father's dirty money." The crowd gasped. A glass dropped somewhere in the back. Marcus's face turned red. He stepped forward, his fists clenched. "Security! Get this woman out of here! She's mentally unstable! She's a stalker!" Two large men in suits started moving toward Elena. "I wouldn't touch me if I were you," Elena said, raising her voice. She reached into a bag. The security guards drew their weapons, thinking she had a gun. Instead, she pulled out the laptop. She held it up like a shield. "This computer contains the full ledger of the Voronin Syndicate's transfers into the Friends of Vance Super PAC," she announced, turning to the crowd and to the cameras that were still live streaming. "It also contains the proof that Marcus Sterling just lost $140 million of your investor money about 2 hours ago." Marcus lunged at her. "Give me that!" But before he could reach her, a voice boomed from the entrance of the terrace. "Carabinieri! Nobody move!" Elena smiled. She hadn't called the Italian police, but Julian must have tipped off Interpol. The flashing blue lights reflected off the calm waters of Lake Como, painting the white roses in shades of emergency neon. Marcus stopped, looking from Eleanor to the police, then to the lake. He was trapped. But Marcus Sterling was a cornered animal, and animals bite. He grabbed a steak knife from the table and grabbed Isabella, yanking her in front of him as a human shield. "Back off!" he screamed, the veneer of the sophisticated CEO shattering completely. "I'll kill her! I swear I'll kill her!" The senator screamed. The guests scrambled, overturning tables. Elena stood her ground, the laptop still in her hand. She looked Marcus dead in the eye. "It's over, Marcus," she said calmly. "You can't buy your way out of this one." The silence on the terrace was absolute, broken only by the frantic lapping of water against the stone dock and the ragged breathing of Marcus Sterling. He held the steak knife pressed against the throat of Isabella Vance, the woman he had sworn to love and cherish just minutes ago. Now, she was nothing more than a meat shield. "Back up!" Marcus screamed, his voice cracking. "I want a boat, I want a pilot, and if anyone follows me, she bleeds." Senator Vance was on his knees, weeping. "Marcus, please, that's my daughter. We can fix this. I can make calls." "You can't fix this," Marcus spat, sweat dripping down his forehead, mixing with the spray of the lake. "She ruined it. She took the money. The Voronins will skin me alive." Elena stood 10 feet away, unmoving. The wind off the lake whipped her hair across her face, but she didn't brush it away. She watched the man she had devoted 12 years to, seeing him truly for the first time. He wasn't a titan of industry. He was a scared little boy who had built a castle out of sand and lies. "Let her go, Marcus," Elena said, her voice cutting through the panic. "The Russians aren't here. The police are. You're making it worse." "Shut up," Marcus swung the knife wildly, nicking Isabella's skin. A thin line of red appeared on her porcelain neck. Isabella screamed, a high, terrified sound that tore at the night air. The Carabinieri officers raised their weapons, red laser sights dancing on Marcus's tuxedo. "Don't shoot!" the senator wailed. "You'll hit her!" Marcus began to drag Isabella backward toward the stone steps leading down to the private dock, where a sleek Riva speedboat bobbed in the water. "You think you've won, Elena?" Marcus sneered, his eyes wild. "You think destroying me saves you? You're an accessory. You're on the accounts. I made sure of it. If I go down, you go down." Elena took a step forward. The laser sights shifted nervously. "No, Marcus," she said calmly, reaching into her pocket. She pulled out a small USB drive. "Julian scrubbed my name from the metadata before we drained the accounts. And this?" She held up the laptop. "This is just hardware. The files, they're already on a server in Julian's apartment, being forwarded to the FBI, the SEC, and, oh yes, a reporter at the New York Times." Marcus froze. The realization hit him like a physical blow. There was no leverage. There was no escape. Even if he got on the boat, his life was over. The money was gone. His reputation was ash. The Russians would find him eventually. You bitch," he whispered. In that split second of distraction, Isabella Vance found her courage. She was a senator's daughter, raised in a world of sharks, and she wore 4-inch stiletto heels. She slammed her heel down onto Marcus's instep with all her strength. Marcus howled in pain, his grip loosening just enough. Isabella threw her head back, smashing it into his nose. There was a sickening crunch. She broke free, stumbling forward into her father's arms. "Now!" the police captain shouted. 4 officers surged forward. Marcus, blinded by pain and blood, swung the knife blindly, but he was tackled to the ground. The expensive tuxedo tore as he was slammed into the stone pavement. Handcuffs clicked, a cold, final sound. Elena watched as they dragged him up. His nose was broken, blood staining his white shirt. He looked at her as he passed, his eyes filled with a hatred so pure it was almost impressive. "I'll kill you," he mouthed. "I will find a way." Elena didn't flinch. She simply raised her chin. "You can try, Marcus, but you'll have to get in line behind the IRS." As they shoved him into the back of a police cruiser, Elena felt a strange sensation. She expected relief. Instead, she felt a hollow exhaustion. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her shaking. "Mrs. Sterling?" Elena turned. An Italian detective was standing there, looking at the laptop in her hand. "I need to take that into evidence," he said, in heavily accented English. "And I need you to come to the station. We have questions regarding your entry into the country and the alert from New York." Elena handed him the laptop. "Of course, detective, I have nothing to hide." But as she walked toward the police cars, she felt a hand on her arm, a heavy, aggressive grip. She turned to see Senator Vance. His face was red, his eyes puffy from crying, but the politician was back in control. The grieving father act was gone. "You listen to me," he hissed, leaning close so the police wouldn't hear. "You saved my daughter, and for that I am grateful. But that laptop contains sensitive information about my campaign. If that leaks, if my name is dragged into Marcus's mess, I will make sure you never see the light of day. I have friends in the Department of Justice." Elena looked at the senator's hand on her arm, then up at his face. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Senator," she said softly, "I just took down a billionaire and the Russian mob in one night while wearing a hoodie. Do you really want to threaten me right now?" She pulled her arm free. "And besides," she added, walking away, The email to the Times. It was scheduled to send automatically if I didn't enter a code by midnight. It's 12:05. She left the senator standing in the ruined garden, his face draining of color, as the first fireworks of the wedding celebration, accidentally triggered by a confused technician, exploded ironically overhead. The holding cell in Milan was cleaner than Eleanor expected, but it was still a cage. She had been sitting on the metal bench for 6 hours. The adrenaline had long since crashed, leaving her shivering in her thin hoodie. She wasn't under arrest, technically. She was being detained for questioning. But she knew what was happening. The frantic international phone calls, the jurisdictional war between the Italians, the Americans, and the powerful people trying to bury the story. At 7 a.m., the heavy metal door buzzed open. Elena looked up, expecting a lawyer or a detective. Instead, a woman walked in. She was dressed in a sharp navy suit, carrying a briefcase. She looked American. "Mrs. Sterling," the woman said, sitting opposite her. "I'm Agent Miller, FBI, Financial Crimes Division." "Am I going home, Agent Miller?" Elena asked, her voice hoarse. "That depends," Miller said, opening a file. "You caused quite a mess last night. You exposed a massive money laundering ring. That makes you a whistleblower. But you also illegally accessed bank accounts, transferred funds without authorization, and fled the jurisdiction of New York while under suspicion of drug trafficking." "The drugs were planted," Elena said instantly. "Marcus set me up." "We know," Miller said, her expression softening slightly. "We found the text messages on Marcus's phone. He was remarkably explicit with his private investigator. The charges in New York are being dropped as we speak." Elena let out a breath she felt she had been holding for 2 days. "So I'm free?" "Not exactly. You're a witness, a very high-value witness. The Veronin Syndicate is not happy. We need to put you in protective custody until the trial." "I don't need protection," Elena said. "I need to finish this." "It is finished, Mrs. Sterling. Marcus is in solitary confinement. His assets are frozen. The senator is resigning within the hour. You won." "No," Elena said, standing up. "He's in jail, but he's not finished. He still has the divorce decree. He still has the penthouse. He still thinks he can beat me in court. I know Marcus. He thrives in chaos. He'll turn state's witness. He'll give you the Russians in exchange for a light sentence, and he'll walk away with his hidden crypto accounts that Julian couldn't find." Agent Miller raised an eyebrow. "Crypto accounts?" "Marcus is paranoid," Elena said, pacing the small cell. "He kept a cold wallet, a physical drive. It wasn't in the safe, and it wasn't on the laptop. Where is it?" "It's in the one place nobody looks," Elena said. "It's in his mother's grave." Miller stared at her. "You're joking." Marcus loved 2 things, money and his mother. He built a mausoleum for her in Long Island. There's a hidden compartment in the urn. He showed it to me once when he was drunk, years ago. He said it was his doomsday drive. If he cuts a deal with you, he walks out of prison in 5 years and goes straight to that grave to pick up 50 million in Bitcoin. Agent Miller closed the file. She looked at Eleanor with a newfound respect. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want a deal," Elena said. "I want full immunity for myself and for Julian Thorne. And I want to be the one to tell Marcus that you found the drive." Miller considered it. "I can get you immunity. But visiting Marcus? That's against protocol." "He's my husband," Elena said, a cold smile touching her lips. "Technically. The divorce was forged, remember? I have spousal rights. I want 5 minutes." 3 days later, Elena walked into the visitors' room at the Federal Detention Center in Milan. Marcus sat behind the reinforced glass. He looked terrible. His nose was splintered, His eyes were black and blue, and the arrogance had been stripped away, leaving a desperate, angry man. He picked up the phone. Elena picked up hers. "You look good in orange, Marcus," she said. "You're dead," Marcus rasped. "You hear me? As soon as I get bail—" "There is no bail for flight risks and international money launderers," Elena interrupted, "and especially not for men who lose the Russian mob's money." "I have leverage," Marcus hissed. "I have names. I have the senator. I'll cut a deal. I'll be out in 3 years, Elena." "And when I get out, you won't have a penny," Elena said softly. Marcus laughed, a cracked, painful sound. "I always have a backup. You think you got everything? You're stupid, Elena. You were always just a pretty face." Elena leaned forward, pressing her hand against the glass. "Agent Miller is at the cemetery right now, Marcus." The color drained from Marcus's face, so fast he looked like a corpse. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "They have the warrant," Elena whispered. "They're opening the urn. They found the ledger, Marcus, the Bitcoin keys, the blackmail files you kept on your partners. It's all gone." Marcus slammed the receiver against the glass. "No, no, you can't!" Guards rushed in behind him, grabbing his arms. "It's over, Marcus," Elena said, watching him struggle. "The divorce is void. I'm filing for a real one tomorrow. And since you used our marital assets to commit felonies, the judge is going to give me everything that's left. The penthouse, the Hamptons house, even the dog." "I'll kill you!" Marcus screamed as the guards dragged him away from the glass. "I made you. You're nothing without me." Eleanor hung up the phone. She watched until the heavy metal door slammed shut, silencing his screams. She stood up, smoothed her skirt, and walked out into the Italian sunlight. Julian was waiting for her by a rental car. He looked healthier, cleaner. "Did he cry?" Julian asked. "He screamed," Elena said. "Good," Julian nodded. "So, what now? We go back to New York?" Elena put on her sunglasses. "Eventually. But I'm technically still on my honeymoon, and I hear the Amalfi Coast is beautiful this time of year." She got into the car. She had destroyed her life to save herself, but as she looked at the road ahead, she realized she hadn't destroyed it. She had just performed a very aggressive renovation, but the story wasn't quite over. As they drove away, Elena's phone, a new one provided by the FBI, buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "You took the Queen off the board, but the King is still in play. We need to talk." V. Elena stared at the screen. V. Voronin, the head of the syndicate. She hadn't just angered the mob, she had gotten their attention, and apparently they were impressed. The text message from V burned on the screen of Elena's phone. The Amalfi sun was warm, smelling of lemons and salt, but the air in the convertible suddenly felt freezing. "Who is V?" Julian asked, glancing at her from the driver's seat. He saw her face pale and swerved slightly on the narrow cliffside road. "Elena, is it Marcus?" "No," Elena said, her voice steady but hollow. "It's Victor Voronin, the man whose money Marcus lost." "We need to call Agent Miller," Julian said, reaching for the dashboard screen. "We need extraction. If the Voronins found us this fast, we're dead. If we call Miller, we spend the rest of our lives in witness protection in Nebraska," Elena said, gripping the phone. "I didn't burn my life down to live in fear, Julian." "Pull over." "Elena, you can't be serious." "Pull over." Julian crunched the car onto a gravel overlook. Below them, the Tyrrhenian Sea stretched out endlessly. Elena typed a response. "Name the time and place. No weapons. Just talk." The bubbles danced for 3 agonizing seconds. Villa Ruffalo. Midnight. Come alone. Midnight in Ravello was ghostly quiet. The tourists were gone, leaving the ancient stone streets to the shadows. Elena wore a black silk dress, mourning clothes for her old life, and walked into the gardens of Villa Ruffalo. She saw him standing by the famous ledge overlooking the coast. Victor Voronin didn't look like a mobster. He looked like a university professor. Silver hair, rimless glasses, wearing a linen suit that cost more than the car she arrived in. Two massive men stood in the shadows, but they didn't move as Eleanor approached. "Mrs. Sterling," Victor said, turning around. His voice was soft, accented with a cultured Russian lilt. "You have caused me a great deal of inconvenience." "Your husband stole from me," Elena corrected, stopping 5 feet away. "I just returned the merchandise to the charities." Victor chuckled. "You have spirit. Marcus was a coward. He stole to pay gambling debts, did you know? He wasn't investing. He was bleeding money in Macau. He used my accounts to plug the holes." "I don't care about Marcus," Elena said. "Why am I here, Victor? If you wanted to kill me, your men could have done it at the airport." "True," Victor nodded. "But killing you creates a mess. The FBI is watching you. And besides, you have something I need." "I gave everything to the feds," Elena lied. "The laptop, the hard drives, the urn." "You gave them the money," Victor said, stepping closer. The air grew heavy. But Marcus was paranoid. He created a dead man's switch, a digital key that grants access to the blackened servers where we keep sensitive personnel files, senators, judges, police captains on our payroll. Marcus stole that key as insurance. Elena's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't found a key. "I don't have it," she said. "You do," Victor said calmly. Marcus was sentimental in his own twisted way. He wouldn't hide it in a bank. He wouldn't hide it in a grave. He would hide it somewhere he could look at every day without suspicion. Victor pointed to Elena's hand, specifically to her ring finger. Elena looked down. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring anymore. She had taken it off at the police station, but she was wearing the engagement ring, a massive 10-carat emerald-cut diamond. "The stone," Victor said. "It's not a natural diamond. It's synthetic. High-grade data storage laser-etched into the crystal lattice. Marcus developed the tech at Titan Global 5 years ago. He told everyone it failed. He lied." Elena stared at the ring. It had been on her finger for 12 years. She had showered with it, slept with it, dined with it, and the whole time she was carrying the blackmail material for half the US government on her hand. "Give me the ring, Elena," Victor said, extending his hand, "and the debt is settled. You walk away. The syndicate forgets you exist." Elena looked at the ring. Then she looked at the cliff edge. She realized something. If she gave him the ring, she was useless to him. A loose end. Loose ends get cut. But if she kept it? Elena took the ring off. She held it over the ledge, dangling it above the dark abyss of the sea below. "No," Elena said. Victor's eyes narrowed. The bodyguards took a step forward. "Don't," Elena warned. "I'll drop it. You'll never find it in the ocean." "You are playing a dangerous game," Victor hissed. "I'm not playing," Elena said, her voice turning into steel. "I'm negotiating. You want the ring? You can't have it. Not yet." "What do you want?" "I want protection," Elena said. "Real protection, not the FBI. I want your word that no one touches me, Julian, or anyone I care about. And I want seed money. Marcus left me with nothing but legal fees. I need $5 million deposited into a Swiss account by morning." Victor stared at her for a long time. Then a slow smile spread across his face. "Marcus was a fool," Victor said. "He married the shark and thought she was a goldfish. Do we have a deal?" "We have a deal," Victor said. "Keep the ring. As long as you have it, you are safe. If you ever try to decrypt it, we will know." "I have no interest in your secrets, Victor," Elena said, sliding the ring back onto her finger. It felt heavier now. "I just want my life back." "You have no life to go back to," Victor said, turning to leave. "But you have a future. Goodbye, Mrs. Sterling." He vanished into the shadows. Elena stood alone on the cliff, the moonlight catching the fake diamond that held the power to topple empires. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was a player. 12 months later, the boardroom of the newly rebranded Phoenix Ventures smelled of espresso and victory. Elena walked in, taking the seat at the head of the table, Marcus's old seat. "The Q4 reports are in," Julian said from her right. He looked healthy, the circles under his eyes replaced by the sharp gaze of a CFO. "Profits are up 40%. The public loves the redemption arc. The scorned wife who cleaned up Wall Street narrative is polling higher than the president." "Good," Elena said, checking her simple Cartier watch. "What about the Lake Como property?" "Sold to a hotel chain," Julian grinned. "We made a killing." The door opened, and a secretary nervously ushered in a man who looked like a ghost. It was Senator Vance. He had resigned in disgrace to avoid prison, throwing Marcus under the bus to save himself. Now, he looked old and defeated. "Elena," the senator stammered, twisting his hat. "It's Isabella. She's in a clinic. The media destroyed her. I'm begging you, please drop the civil suit. It's bankrupting us." Elena looked at the man who had once threatened to bury her. She picked up the legal file on her desk. She thought about that night on the terrace, Isabella screaming, smashing her heel onto Marcus's foot. "She saved my life that night," Elena said quietly. She ripped the file in half and dropped it in the trash. "Consider the debt paid. But tell her if I ever see her in New York again, I won't be so kind." The senator sobbed with relief, hurrying out before she could change her mind. "You're getting soft," Julian teased. "No," Elena smiled, grabbing her coat. "I'm just finished with the trash. I have one last stop to make." The visitation room at the ADX Florence Supermax prison was cold and grey. Marcus sat behind the reinforced glass, looking thin and hollow. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a desperate twitch. Elena picked up the phone. "Hello, Marcus." He squinted at her. "You came to gloat?" "No," she said. She held up a photo against the glass. It was her on the cover of Forbes, the headline reading, "The New Titan." "I came to say thank you." Marcus blinked, confused. "What?" "If you hadn't betrayed me," Elena said, leaning in, "I would still be that pathetic woman waiting for you to call. You freed me, Marcus. You forced me to become a shark to survive. You created your own monster, and she's doing just fine." She hung up the phone and turned to leave. "Elena!" Marcus screamed, banging on the glass. "The ring! Do you still have the ring? The Russians! They'll kill me if they think I talked. Tell them I didn't talk." Elena paused at the door. She looked back at him one last time and tapped her ring finger. It was bare. The fake diamond holding the blackmail files was safely locked in a Swiss vault, her eternal insurance policy. She smiled, a cold, dazzling smile, and walked out. Outside, the Colorado sun was bright. Her driver opened the door of the black SUV. "Where to, Ms. Sterling?" "The airport," Elena said, putting on her sunglasses. "I have a business trip to Tokyo, and this time I'm actually going." And that is the story of Elena Sterling, the woman who refused to be a victim. It's a reminder that sometimes the person you trust the most is the one holding the knife, and the only person who can save you is yourself. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. What would you have done if you were Elena? Would you have kept the ring or thrown it in the ocean? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching.